Hey guys and girls, welcome to AMA 13. I'm going to answer some of your questions. The first answer to a question was from the last video about fragrances. Someone had a good point and they said, why don't you just make a complete range or duplicates of products with no fragrance? And I just think that doesn't make any sense. From a business perspective, overwhelmingly people want fragrances, and to duplicate the line to have versions of the products without fragrances would be so costly, just completely unviable. Sorry. A second question I got twice this week is, what is rubbing compound and how does it compare to cutting compound or cutters? And these names, they're all the same thing essentially. I'm not sure where rubbing compound came from. I'm guessing because you used to use it by hand and used to rub a surface with some cutters by hand. Cutting compound, again, I don't know exactly where this comes from. However, rest assured that if a product is called rubbing compound, cutting compound, or cutting gel or cutting agent, that they are essentially all the same thing. Also, polish and cutters are essentially also the same thing. Also, the term polish and the term cutters, I had one person who was telling me that his friend was saying they're two completely different things, which they kind of are, and perhaps the two products he was talking about were different. However, the term polish and the term cutters essentially just mean abrasive cutting compounds, abrasive polishes, and they're all the same. However, some manufacturers, including us, like to differentiate heavy cutting compounds designed to remove deep scratches or deeper imperfections from the finer cutters, the polishers that remove minor marks, swirling, etc. So we'll call one cutting compound and one polish. I hope that makes sense. They are essentially all the same thing. You've got abrasives suspended in a liquid and you apply them to a pad and you move them around with a machine, or you can use them by hand. But they differentiate only in the size of the abrasives and therefore the job that they're intended for. And usually manufacturers, including ourselves, will call them more aggressive cutters, cutting compounds or something along that line. And the finer stuff meant to increase gloss and remove very, very light imperfections, polishes. We even call our ultra-fine polish Jeweler's Rouge because it's so fine that gives you the reason it was dubbed Jeweler's Rouge is because it was ultra fine, and it really did no work to remove imperfections. It just rounded off surfaces on such a minute level that its job really was just to increase gloss to a very, very, very high level. So it was dubbed Jeweler's Rouge. I hope that helps, but I can expand on that if you like. Another question is a good one from a customer who saw me driving a customer's car, bringing back a customer's car to the workshop from the customer's office. He said, "Hey, new car," and I said, "No, I wish." And he said, "What's that on the window?" And when I told him what it was, he said, "You have to put that in one of your videos. That's a cool idea, a neat trick." So we thought we'd explain it. Now we use these, I think, just fantastic products. The brand is Seasucker, but you can find products that are similar. I stress similar because I've used so many different brands and some of them have failed. And when these fail, it can be spectacular and costly. So I've landed on and I trust the Seasucker brand. Now you don't have to purchase this particular brand. I have no affiliation in any way with Seasucker. They're not paying me any money. They don't, no kickbacks, nothing like that. I just trust this brand with my expensive gear. I usually use it in a way where it probably wouldn't matter if you used something a little cheaper that was less reliable, with my phone attached to it on the inside of a car to record myself driving customers' vehicles. I document everything because I'm so worried that something may go wrong one day when I'm responsible for a customer's baby. And I want to record everything that's happening. Fortunately, a while ago, there were some issues with the customer's car. The dashboard lit up like a Christmas tree. And I told him that had happened. He said, "That's never happened before. What did you do?" And I said, "I didn't do anything wrong. I was driving it normally, as you'd expect. But I just thought I'd let you know." And he said, "I have no idea what that is." It went away by itself and it's never come back again. And the customer's not worried he doesn't own that vehicle anymore. However, that cemented in me how important it was to document the time that you have in charge of someone else's property, especially if it is sometimes worth hundreds of thousands, sometimes $1 million. I get very, very nervous. And for some reason, just recording myself driving and recording what's happening helps me to feel a little bit better. If nothing goes wrong a couple of weeks later, because it can be a lot of footage and a lot of data, I usually will just delete the footage. It's not necessary anymore. But documenting everything, the condition of the car when you collect it, document moving it if you're going to move it, especially if you're going to drive it on the roads, document all of that. Document your job, and then document the finish. So the whole process from start to finish, from the time you take responsibility for that vehicle to the time you hand it back, is all well documented for many reasons. One, you can go back and have a look at what you did to the job, and another reason is if something were to happen, this particular car that I was driving the other day had no dash camera, so if something were to happen, I would have some footage, and it costs nothing. A C-sucker is I don't know how much this was, but very inexpensive. I stuck on it a little Manfrotto branded phone holder, which has proved to be very, very reliable. I bought a few different types of these things, and some of them were complete junk. And this Manfrotto one, I think it was $20, something like that, has been very, very, very reliable and feels solid. And it just it's easy to clamp in different styles of phones, different sizes, and where they've got buttons on the side, and it's posed no issue. Some of the other ones that have a larger footprint can press buttons, and they're a little bit cumbersome to use. So yeah, C-sucker, I prefer to use the biggest one. I spoke to someone from C-sucker, and he said, "You're mad, you need the smallest one, and even then it's overkill." But I just need to know that the bigger the better. I've got he laughed at me for holding such a tiny device with such a large version of the C-sucker. He said that's designed to hold 2 or 3 bicycles to the roof of the outside of a car. Holding your phone on the inside of a car, that it's complete overkill, but I like it. So anyway, I hope that helps someone. I hope that's useful. Another thing I also use the C-sucker for is to clamp it to glass and record what I'm doing with the buff. You might have seen this or you wouldn't have known that this is the way it was filmed, but in a recent video where I detailed a Porsche Cayman GT4, and I was polishing an air duct that was close to the rear window. I had the C-sucker on the rear window. And as long as you're clamping it to glass, there's no issues. I wouldn't put it on a polycarbonate window. I don't trust that it may, as it's clamping down and there's that huge pressure and it's pressing down, the rubber wearing against the polycarbonate might leave a mark. So I probably wouldn't use it on polycarb. But on glass, I've never, ever had an issue, and I don't see any reason why. Glass is just too hard to mark that way. And the C-sucker is just I think it's rubber, the material. It's basically a glazier's cup, and you suction mount it to glass mostly. Usually you can put it on paint, and people have. I don't, because I just got this feeling it might mark the paint, and perhaps even irretrievably I might not be able to buff the marks out. But on glass is super, super strong, will hold a lot. We've put video cameras on the outside of cars with this. We've used it to hold up lights. They take a ton of weight, super strong, last forever. They resell easy if you decide, no, I don't want this anymore, and you throw it up on eBay or something like that. Everyone always wants a C-sucker. They don't want the generic stuff. So anyway, I hope that's of some use. Person that saw it found it, said it was a cool idea, and I should share it with more people. So there you go. The next one, in another video, I mentioned shopping tags and how I don't like shopping tags on car, what I call shopping tags. Shopping tags are things like fuel consumption labels, dealer stickers, stock numbers that dealers leave on vehicles. Sometimes the dealers don't remove stickers, labels, and things that are applied at the factory. And for some weird reason, some customers also like them to stay on the car. So if I do notice them, I ask the customers, I say, hey, would you like me to remove the fuel consumption label? And for some reason, people say, no, I want to keep it. I don't understand that. You're not supposed to keep the fuel consumption label on the vehicle. By law, it must be on the vehicle before it's registered, and then you were supposed to, at least when these were introduced, and a government representative told me about them. He said, now we're going to introduce these fuel consumption labels, and by law, they must be on the vehicle. They must be applied to the vehicle. And once the vehicle is registered, then you remove them. So that's the advice I'm still giving to customers. It may have changed. It may be wrong. You may not have to remove them. I'm not sure how that works, but it's like an old registration label where it's redundant. There's no need to display fuel consumption information on your vehicle as you're driving around, and it's ugly and it's in your way. So unless you're buying that car to keep untouched and you want all the pre-delivery stuff maintained because you're going to never ever drive that car, put it away, and you're speculating as to its appreciation as a classic, then perhaps leave all those labels and things on it. But if it's just a mass-produced vehicle that you're going to drive on the road, get rid of all that stuff. The dealer stickers that they are advertising, people have tried to tell me otherwise, but I don't see it as anything other than advertising. And if you like the dealer, I liked the dealer, I liked the salesman. I thought he looked after me, and I thought it was really nice. And I left the dealer sticker on there for the entire time I owned the vehicle. It was small, it was subtle, it was out of the way, and I left it there. But most of the time, they're not doing anything other than selling me a product, and I don't have a deal. I don't need to advertise for this company. And generally, unfortunately, more times than not, I don't like them at all. I haven't had a good experience there. So I definitely don't want to help them out by constantly advertising for them. And I just think it clutters the rear of the car. You can even take that a step further. I don't like badges on vehicles. So most of my vehicles, the badges are removed. Sometimes just the model designation, sometimes the branding as well. Usually not. Usually I'll leave the branding and remove the model designation, depending on what I feel is too much clutter. Some cars have, I think we counted once on I think it was a Maloo Ute. There was about 6 badges on the back of the car, and it was just too many. When we removed them in Photoshop for the customer, we said, look at this, we kind of healed them out and said, what do you think? It looks pretty cool. And he said, yeah, that looks much cleaner. The back of the car looked much better. And I said, look, this is Photoshop, which is great. Make it the screensaver on your phone. That way, every day you can have a look at this photograph and you can see what you think. If after a while you start to think, no, I've made the wrong decision, it's just Photoshop. You haven't done anything to the vehicle, and then we won't. But if you get used to it and you like that look, then when you bring your car in for a detail, we'll remove those badges that you've decided you want gone. They're not damaged in any way. We put them in a Ziploc bag and put them in the glove compartment. That way you've always got them. They go on just the same way they were removed, very, very quickly and easily. And there you go. You've got less stuff to clean around and less clutter on the back of the car, and you get a cleaner look. Subjective, but I think that most people will agree having a car that's less cluttered with no advertising on it generally looks better. Also had a couple of questions, both in the same week, a few weeks ago, a few months ago actually, about cleaning vinyl tonneau covers on utes. Then about 1 month ago, I had a Commodore ute in, and it had a vinyl tonneau cover. So I thought, okay, this is great. And it wasn't in too bad condition, so it wasn't going to give me some dramatic results, but it definitely needed to be revived, and I thought I'd use that to answer that question. And I collected the footage and never did anything with it until now. So my preferred method is to attack the tonneau cover as one of the first things you do as part of a detail if it has a vinyl tonneau cover. So if you're detailing a ute and it has a vinyl tonneau cover, attack that probably first, even before you wash the car. If the car's fairly clean, do the tonneau cover first. If it's really, really filthy, wash and dry the car first, then get onto the tonneau cover. And what I do there is to apply a little Jaffa directly to the surface, or you can apply it to a brush or a cloth. And I use a brush, a toothbrush or a nail brush, or really anything that will get into the stitching, in and around the stitching, and loosen all the dirt and kind of soften things and allow me to more easily rinse the dirt away. Then I do the bulk of the cover with a cloth and Jaffa, and then I wash the tonneau cover down, and I make sure that I wash anything around the tonneau cover that the Jaffa may have dripped on. I don't want Jaffa which is a citrus degreaser, by the way, if you're unfamiliar with the product. I don't want it to dry on paintwork. Even though I haven't detailed the car, why make more damage that you have to correct later? Jaffa is very, very gentle and usually won't damage a surface. But if you do have any chemical on a surface and you allow it to evaporate, it will leave some kind of, albeit minor, mark on the surface. So make sure you remove it completely, and then I like to dry it with some air and check. Sometimes you might need to attend to a couple of areas that may just need a second pass. So I hope that helps. That's cleaning tonneau covers. Really important too, especially this ute was white with a black, obviously black tonneau cover, and getting that to not look orange anymore and to look black and new and crisp again really finished off that. The presentation was lifted so much overall because that tonneau cover was nice and black and clean and sharp looking. Last one, but quite a big one. Wasn't a question from a customer, just something I thought I'd mention. We had a customer's MONARO. Aaron bought his MONARO in. The last time he bought it in was just a smidge under 10 years ago. We did a detail on it and coated it in full metal jacket. At the time, we mentioned that the full metal jacket formula that we had at the time should last up to 5 years on this vehicle. And we were told by one person in particular that this wouldn't be the case. And it gave me immense satisfaction to see it last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and in almost 10 years. Aaron brought it back to us. He's kept it in a factory. It was in a factory, and then I think the last 1 or 2 years at his home, uncovered, as I suggested. This was something else that I also was criticized for heavily. I believe that not covering a vehicle is better than covering it. So Aaron kept the car in a factory. It got incredibly dusty. He washed it at the most once a year, but really it was probably 2 or 3 years at some point that it was between washes. So it got very, very, very dirty. And I said to him, I know it looks bad, but just relax because you've got that coating underneath. And he had bird droppings on it. He had insect droppings on it. He had some kind of condensation drip on it. And it was only the last time that he bought it in after 9.5 years since the coating was applied, that some of that damage wasn't able to be removed with the wash. I thought it actually would have damaged the clear coat, and I said, I'd love to see how much longer that coating can last, but I think you should finally bring it in. I think 10 years is enough. Bring the car in, we'll strip it all off, and we'll start again. And when he brought it in, I found that the watermarks, that the damage that was on the vehicle was in fact in the full metal jacket layer and hadn't at all touched the clear coat of the vehicle. Probably should mention this vehicle was driven once, maybe twice a year, which is probably not enough exercise, but Aaron's a busy guy and this is purely collectible. But he's just, when he has the time, he would exercise it, and that just happened to be around on average once or twice a year, unless I'll ask him to correct me if I'm wrong. So vehicle wasn't used very much, and that's why the full metal jacket coating lasts that long. Normally, would full metal jacket last you 10 years? No. If you've got a vehicle that you're driving every day and you're driving it in the winter especially, and it's been subjected to all kinds of weather, especially if you store it outside, you're not going to see anywhere close to 10 years. Not from full metal jacket, not from any coating, in my opinion. The reason this lasted so long is because it was very, very rarely used and undercover most of the time, even though it got this dirty. The dirt actually doesn't do much damage as long as you're washing the car correctly, and Aaron was washing it with our recommended methods. Again, another thing we're still heavily criticized for. The car had no swirling. The full metal jacket was working very, very well, and we removed the full metal jacket from the vehicle with chemical methods, cleanse strong. We found no damage, zero damage to the paintwork. Awesome results. The satisfaction I get from finally, after 10 years, being able to prove the critics wrong was huge. And for the people that believed in us 10 years ago, that were supporting us and saying, I'm going to give Damian my money to have a full metal jacket applied to the vehicle, thank you very much. And your the research you did based on the data that we provided to you, you were right. Basically, you were right to choose Full Metal Jacket. It turned out that it absolutely surpassed that up to 5 years claim that we made. The real bad sticking point is the claim was made by a representative of a competitor on just to make it even more cheeky, on our website, which is Detail Addiction at the time. The person's name, because this is just statistical information, I'm not slandering him, the person's name was and he worked for a rather large competitor, and he was just constantly being critical and saying these claims were outlandish, and there's no way that we'd come even close to the claimed longevity of 5 years, and here we are 10 years later, not with just one vehicle but just a few, because we don't have many customers that don't drive their cars and maintain them and haven't sold their cars, so that we can actually go back and check. But Aaron, thankfully, has kept his vehicle and allowed us to keep an eye on it over time. We finally, I didn't like doing this, but finally removed the coating. I would have liked to have left it on just to see how far we could get out of it. I don't think it was going to last much longer, maybe 12 or 13 years. But I was worried about the damage I saw on it. And the coating had failed, in my opinion. So even though it was still providing its hydrophobic characteristics, it had failed because, in my opinion, because it was you had crow's feet. It looked like what happens to clear coat when paint 2-pack when it fails. The clear coat, you get crow's feet throughout it, and then it finally just delaminates and comes off. And that looked like what was happening here, and it makes complete sense that's what was those characteristics were being displayed. And I thought that another 2 years at the absolute most anyway, the coating would have completely failed, and somewhere between it failing and him bringing it back to us, it would be providing him with no protection, and that wouldn't be good, just in case something had landed on the car, it had moisture build-up, condensation or something like that, and that would do damage to the clear coat. Now, it's because he purchased the car new, it's got huge sentimental value, and it is a genuine collectible. We didn't want the original clear coat to be damaged, so it was the right choice to bring it back in, end the mega 10-year-long test, remove the paint protection, the existing paint protection, and reapply it again, which we did for him. So I hope that's a nice little nugget for those of us who've the customers that have been around for 10 plus years and saw this happen. The same person told me that the BMW that I wet sanded, the black BMW that I did a full wet sand on, this is so obscure. You'd have to be a really old customer that remembers all the jobs that we did, that the clear coat would fall off that. And guess what? 10 years later, the guy's got the same car, same kind of guy, same kind of story. Guy just loves Nick loves his black BMW. Said the paint on it is absolutely perfect, and it's still just as flat and good looking as it was when I detailed it nearly 10 years ago. I've asked him if we can get the car back in, and he said it's in storage. He doesn't drive it every day, but he will get it to us, and we'll throw that up in a video. For me, it's just immense satisfaction from all the hard work I put in. For some customers, it might just be a cool thing to look at and say, hey, I do remember that car. I do remember you doing that job. I do remember the comments that the paint wouldn't last, and it's good to see that that particular person was wrong. All right, last question, or the answer to one last question. Someone mentioned to me that someone had mentioned to him that a few months ago I had passed away. Thankfully, I'm still here. Not true. Okay, everything's fine. If you hear something like that, nothing happened, everything's fine. Not sure of the complete myth. All right. I hope you had a great Christmas, and I hope New Year's is going to be good for you. I hope 2023, I'm sure 2023 is going to be better than 2022. We're back at it. We're going to be going strong in 2023. We're finally settled at the new place. So 2023, from our perspective, is going to be good. Hey, what do you do with a dead chemist? You bury him.